with the way that you remove expectations and just being okay with doing, there's so much value in that, because just falling in love or enjoying or finding gratification or allowing yourself to show yourself grace by doing this run walk is what you're doing is you're listening to, I think, what your body needs and what you need.
What do you say, my man? Happy Monday. Happy Jackhammer Day outside my window.
Well, I was going to say, I got an email from you a little bit earlier than I normally do today, and I thought, man, it's a Monday. I wonder if he's just up and, pumped. And I was like, well, maybe it's the jackhammer.
Maybe it's the jack. Well, yeah, I was kind of waiting there for a minute to see if it would go away, but I don't know. You probably can't hear it.
No, I can't hear it right now. It's good to go. You can hear it, and if you've ever been to Nashville and the robust construction that goes on there, jackhammer is basically like the city's tune right now. Jackhammering and building the city bird. That's right, jackhammer, the city bird, the jackhammer Jay. But hey, welcome, Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 314. Welcome aboard. If it's your first time listening, we appreciate it. We know there are a lot of options out there, so we appreciate you giving us the time to tune in. And if this is you've listened to us before, we appreciate you coming back. We have, as we said, 313 other podcasts in the archives. Feel free to dig in. They all have titles and details, so you can pick and choose. You can go in order. Do whatever floats your boat. But we appreciate you joining us. And we cover all things triathlon, life, how they intersect, they intertwine, and the effects on both you and I as both coaches and athletes. And then a lot of times we also kind of weave in stories and interactions we have with our athletes as we coach and kind of the things they're going through, and then also kind of just the vibe in the field that we get from not just the athletes that we work with, but also in our Facebook group. We have a closed group that's just for the podcast listeners, which is Crushing Iron Group. You can search it on Facebook. And so a lot of times we'll also try to mirror the kind of predominant theme that I think most triathletes kind of always kind of have, give or take a few weeks or months over the course here. But that's what we do, and we hope you enjoy it. Today's episode.
Yes, we do. We hope you enjoy it. That's 313 hours of triathlon and life-related content.
Yeah, that is a lot. I do want to check in quick because we usually do a college football talk. How are you dealing with the Badgers' last-minute upset to the Fighting Illini?
Yeah. We were 31-point favorites going into that game.
Yeah, I left the house to go to the grocery store, and you guys are up by 9, and I thought, it's in the bag.
Yeah.
Things are good. I came home, clicked on ESPN.com. Last-second field goal as time expires to the Fighting Lovie Smiths.
Well, our Heisman candidate running back fumbled in the end there and gave him an opportunity, and our quarterback
never fumbles, right? He
had a stint a couple years ago where he went through some, but he's been real secure. He's probably arguably the best back that's come out of Wisconsin. He's really good.
He's usually sure-handed. He's about as sure-handed as they go.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with him. And then our quarterback, who's thrown one interception all season, threw another one in the clutch minutes, and that pretty much. So it was just kind of one of those things where I was hoping they would get through it, kind of like an Ironman, just get through it and fight another day, even if it's not your best day, and just get out of there alive. And they pretty much, like everything else, they can still control their destiny, quote unquote. But it was just, it's just unfortunate. But I got a lot of yard work done after that. I was trimming trees and just sawing and hacking limbs, and then I went for a long run in the wilderness, and thankfully I came back. So
yeah, thankfully you came back, and hey, welcome to the life of a Tennessee Vols fan, where Saturdays are meaningless.
Well, there is bonus to that, right? When you're not expecting anything, and here I am, I try to resist getting in too deep, and then they kind of suck me in with
suck you in every year.
They do.
Just like basketball. Every year you're like, you know what? And you guys can go back and dig in the archives. All right, if you're listening, he's laughing because he knows I'm so right.
I know.
Like,
I'm
listen,
done, man.
Mike and I have been best friends for like 7 years. Every year around, kind of especially college, after the college football season ends, usually in sometimes a blowout loss or something. Early in the basketball season, Mike will be like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with it. College sports, I'm done with it. I'm thinking about canceling my cable. I think I'm gonna go nuts. I think every year. I mean, I think like clockwork. I'm not sure what kind of episode range that lies in every year, but every year he is gonna quit cable. He's gonna give up college basketball and take some more time. And then, as usual, you get on the phone with DirecTV to try to cancel your package, and it takes 7 days. And by the end of the 7 days, you're like, you know what? I do need this. I do need college basketball in my life because I can't take it anymore. But we'll see how that goes. Tennessee Vols get beat by Bama. Held tight, from what I understand, for a good portion of the game. But it started at 9 o'clock, so yeah, I was asleep.
Yeah, more fool's gold. Oh, they're still in it.
Yeah, as usual. That's why I don't get sucked up in it. But
it's hard.
A lot of action. It's like, it is a lot of action this weekend. Like, people recovering from past races. You got Ironman Florida coming up. You got Ironman Arizona coming up. You had North Carolina 70.3. That was in action, which I was very happy to see that race go off without a hitch. No canceled swim, no shortened swim, no canceled race. That race, once Ironman bought it from Beach to Battleship, who is the owners of it, who is like one of the longest standing full distance and half distance races here in the U.S. They've had like just tremendous bad luck with hurricanes and adverse weather and all kinds of things. So last year the whole race was canceled. So I know a lot of people were excited to go back there. A little chilly, but pretty good temps. A very fast course. Had a lot of good results and athletes, and looks like it was a great event. So hopefully they can continue to do that. I had a couple places we could go today in terms of direction, but wanted to see, as usual, if you had anything to one of your burning desires.
Today?
No.
I got nothing, man. It's just good to be talking to you. I'm sure we can have a nice conversation about something that's on your mind.
Well, this is probably like not a super triathlon related question or a topic.
Actually,
but
that's good.
I think it is, because we've actually covered this before, and I think one of our podcasts actually is even I think called Finding Your Why. And it was a really popular podcast. I can't remember exactly which one it is. We'll try and note that in the show notes for this one. But I had an athlete that was emailing back and forth with me this weekend, and about kind of things that he had learned over the last year, and things that how he had grown, and the positive things. And he kept saying, well, I'm not really sure what my why is. And I was like, well, that's okay. You don't have to know your why. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that athletes struggle with, is feeling like they have to know this like life-changing, world-changing why. And like, if you don't have one, then somehow your training and your triathlon journey is just kind of like shallow and superficial. Because there are a lot of athletes out there who have a really, really powerful, quote unquote why, like, why they do what they do, what gets them up in the morning, what motivates them, what brings them like this, huge emotion. And I think that's obviously great, because I think it really drives people. But I think, and I've had this conversation with a couple athletes recently. It's like, I just don't know what my why is. And I haven't really thought about it that way, to be honest, because I've always been pretty in touch with my why. I'm probably a fairly more emotional person than I think a lot of people are in some ways, but I've always been very rooted in why I'm doing things. And as I was kind of thinking about it, I said, you know what? I said, it's perfectly fine to not have one or not be able to put your finger on one, because the truth of the matter is that you're in search of one. And I think that we just forget that sometimes, that we're on such a journey. And I think people are drawn to the sport of just endurance sports in general, triathlon, ultras, marathons, running, whatever it is, because they're looking for something, but they just don't know what. And I'm sure we all have come across people who know their why, but don't act upon it. That aren't really moved by it, who don't have the corresponding actions that meet this like emotional dissertation they have to give about what really moves them and gets them going, or what inspires them, and then you look at their actions they don't follow, and then you see people who are just in relentless pursuit of finding it. And I just think I just want to be clear. I guess I'm not sure if there's like a huge topic to go on to here, but in a conversation. But I just think it's very important for athletes to know that it's perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing a quote unquote why, because oftentimes you won't know it until you find it. But it's the practice and the commitment and the dedication and a lot of times the relentlessness of just being in something that's so process oriented like triathlon, that pushes you, that motivates you, that there are struggles, there are hard times, there are good times, and through that you kind of figure things out. You figure out who you are, because we're all different. Like you and I are different guys. I mean, we're just probably a year ago or 2 years ago, not to mention like when we first started this podcast, or when you and I first became friends. And so I think that's why this sport is so great. Endurance sports is so great in general, is that it allows us that opportunity to figure things out in a, hopefully, a much healthier way than you can see other people try to figure out. Like they're lost with their life. They don't really know what the meaning of it is. They're struggling with like an identity crisis, or they don't know what to do with their job or their personal life. And so they might choose other avenues that are probably not as positive health-wise as picking up endurance sports are. And so, like I said, I don't know if that's a huge topic for you or anything resonated with you, but I wanted to be clear for those athletes out there who think that it's, see these like, super inspirational stories, and they'll do the Kona broadcast, and I think usually it's like November, December, and it'll be like all these like moving, like, tear jerking, stories. And not all of our stories are like that, and they don't have to be. And it doesn't devalue what you do, and it doesn't make you any different. It can just be like, I just want to get better and push myself, and that's all it is. And so I think it's a good thing to talk about. And obviously, if you think it's a stupid topic, we can move on.
Actually, I thought maybe when you said you had a talk with one of your athletes that maybe we had that talk and I didn't realize it.
No,
because it is one of those things. I would have to echo that exact same sentiment. I don't always know my why. I in a lot of ways, I almost create a new why every day. And like if you want to put something in a bucket and say, hey, this is my why, this is my existence, and that, to me, that's always comes back to something very large, very spiritual in nature. That's and I think a lot of times that's what we search for, is that sort of connection and understanding of, what's the meaning of life sort of stuff. And for me, a lot of times it does come down to what's my why today, because a lot of I'll be in this phase where a lot of times my why is I do triathlon, I do things that I hope will make me feel good, will have me clear thinking, will make me happy, and those are all kind of general things. And some days I have all that. So what's my why today? And it could be different, and certain things motivate me in different ways, And I kind of joked that said, when you said that this may not be as tri-related today, and I said, well, good, because sometimes, triathlon gets overwhelming to me. And we podcast twice a week, and we're constantly thinking about it. We're always in contact with athletes, and it's kind of our thing. And I have a deep creative side that has always been a big part of me. And I've played music, and I've written, and I've made films, and all kinds of stuff like that. So that is important to me. And sometimes it's important to nurture those kind of things as well. And as you know, I've been kind of working on the new website over the weekend, and that's the kind of thing, it really kind of picked me up. It was sort of a different place in my brain, and it just sort of got me into a better place, I think, because I've been running the last, several days, and I was out running yesterday. I've had some good days in a row, and I got to the point towards the end of that run where I was starting to struggle a little bit, and I was like, why am I doing this? And I think a lot of it is because of what you're saying. It's sort of like you don't necessarily know, but you just hope something kind of materializes out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's I think the faith part, and is that that you're going down the right road, and hopefully at the right speed.
Right.
And hope you just kind of trust that something's going to materialize there, and you're going to figure something out. And like I said, I think that, man, the pressure of having to define what drives you in life is very tricky to me
and daunting.
Yeah, it's daunting. It's like I'm doing this for my some family member or whatever, and that kind of like, or I'm doing it for a cause, and it can kind of wear you down, I think, sometimes, if that's your, like, I don't know, it's very difficult to kind of pinpoint. So,
well, I mean, there were a lot of great things that you said right there. One is kind of what you said towards the end, was that, listen, like, and I think this is a huge conversation that can be applied with every athlete over different times of the year. And treading water is always better than drowning. And when you said, like, you were out going for a run and you're like, well, why am I even doing this? And you're not really sure what direction to go or what you're feeling about. But sometimes, like, you're rarely ever going to figure out, like, so I would use the example, like, if you don't feel like doing anything, you're better off figuring out things by going for a walk than sitting on your ass watching TV.
Yeah.
Like, very few people would say, man, I had this really, like, this epiphany and this, like, thought that just really resonated with me, and it's changed the whole way that I think, and now I know what direction I'm going, and I was in the middle of watching Friends. No, it's never happened. Okay, it's like, it never happened. But you see people go on, like, there is a guy that I work with who's having just a really hard time with family, and I was like, dude, don't worry about working out right now, but the best thing you could do is, if you have time, leave your phone at home and just go for a walk. Because even like a 20-minute walk, it's kind of crazy how it can, like, in just getting outside, can totally, like, refresh who you are. And I know there's always kind of this, not always, but this debate over mood follows action or action follows mood. Kind of which one comes first.
Right.
And I think you could go either way with it. I think you'd probably argue it till the end of time. But, like, if you're in a bad mood and you go for a walk, most people come back, like, feeling a million times better. They've had time to, like, distance themselves from it. But again, the point is you're doing something. You're participating in an action. It doesn't have to be some earth-shattering thing, but even going for a run where you might not know why, but you're still doing it, is going to help you get further towards figuring out what that answer is, versus just being stagnant and sitting still. Like, that's one of the biggest misconceptions with especially athletes, is that, like, I don't really know what I need to do, so I'm just going to do nothing. Well, the only thing you're cementing and figuring out is how much you like doing absolutely nothing. And one of the things that resonated with me on one of the podcasts I told you to listen to a couple weeks ago was that Ryan Holiday, that I'm a huge fan of him. I recommend his books all the time. He's done Ego is the Enemy, The Obstacle is the Way, and he just came out with a new book called Stillness Is The Key. And he was doing a podcast with Rich Roll, and I listened to it, and he had something that I had personally never even thought of, but I find it just brilliant, is that triathletes, especially endurance athletes, type A athletes, are so routine based with, goal oriented, that if one, like, small thing gets out of whack with their routine, the whole day's done. It's it. I can't do it. I usually run before work. I slip with my alarm. Coach, what am I going to do? Well, you go run after work, or you don't. Like, it's really not like some, like, scientific theory you need to, like, figure out. What he said, what that struck me, was, like, he has multiple routines that, and, like, which I've never thought of, because he's a dad, he's got kids, he's married, his job is super busy, but he's like, I have routines for when I travel. I have a specific routine for when I don't have a morning meeting and I travel. I have a specific routine for when I have to take my kids to daycare in the morning. I have another specific routine for when I don't have to take my kids to daycare and I'm at home. And what I found just really kind of fascinating about that was that he's allowing himself 5 to 6 to 7 opportunities to always be set up for success. No matter how he wakes up for the day, no matter what he's doing, no matter where he is, he has kind of like this comfort piece he can, like, fall back on, that's like, hey, I got this today. But it doesn't have to look the same every day. And again, I think that's one of the traps that we fall into as endurance athletes, that are so habitually obsessed with doing the same thing over and over again at the same time, in the same swim lane, the same locker, and at the gym, bike trainer, everything has to be perfect. I can't get my smart trainer to work today, so my workout's over. My start trainer's not working. The energy mode isn't working. I spent 88 minutes trying to get it fixed, and guess what? I only got an 8-minute workout in. Sorry, coach. Instead of just like saying, "Hey, I'm just going to bike or I'm going to go run." Like it's that like innate problem solving that some athletes really struggle with. But back to your point about just kind of figuring it out, is you don't have to have a routine to figure things out. You don't have to have a goal to be on a journey. I think everyone has this like, and I think as probably coaches, and probably we've talked about before in this podcast before, is that like you don't have to have a race to be training. Like you don't have to be, you don't have to have all the answers. And it's perfectly fine. I think it's wonderful for people to be moved by causes and experiences that get them out the door to get to do things. And, I've done a lot of things in my life that have been moved by experiences and emotions and things that really hit home with me. But the other side of that is that the harder you go into something like that, that's emotionally invested and you are putting so much energy into it, and that is your why, reciprocated from that is also a tremendous amount of pressure and burden, I feel. And that there is nothing wrong with just saying, you know what? I do triathlon for myself. I do it for my sanity. I do it for my health. Hell, I just want to look good naked. There is zero problem with that, because you're at least participating in something that is good for you. And again, you and I could both say, if we kind of look back over our triathlon training trajectory and like what's motivated us each year, I think you could probably look back and look through every year of your triathlon, life and say, well, this year it was this, and this year it was that, and this year it was this. And then going back to your other point, it's like sometimes it changes day to day. And that doesn't mean that you're lost. It just means that you're still moving in a good direction, and you have this innate purpose behind you that say, you know what, I might not have all the answers, but I know the best answer today is to get out and at least do something. And yes, does it mean you have to work it every day while you're trying to figure it out? No. But I would also argue that more oftentimes than not, doing something is almost always better than not. When you're trying to figure things out, and it could be a 20-minute walk, it could be a 30-minute run, it could be an hour and a half bike outside, whatever it is, clear your head or go for a swim. Like most people can solve all the world's problems in a pool. Like people want to have like pool power meters and swim P3s and listen to music. All I want is a device that I can put next to my goggles that transcribes every thought that I've ever had while I'm swimming.
Yeah,
because
no kidding,
I could have written like 20 books, and I could probably have like 19 copyrighted like projects and inventions that I came up in the pool. Because then when I get out and I shower, it's like I'm a dumb idiot again. It's like anyway.
Yeah, man.
No, I think it's a good. I think it's a good topic, but I think it's a healthy place to be too, because I think it means you're trying to figure things out.
What's that quote? Not all who wander are lost, or something like that. That's one of my favorites too, man. It's like, I mean, none of us really know. I mean, we can have our ideas and things like that, but you have to kind of wander through it to figure out what's going on or how you feel about something. And I really like what you're saying about like the walks and that kind of thing, because that's, I mean, physiologically or whatever, that only makes sense. I mean, we know that getting up and moving around makes us feel better. And I think, triathlon a lot of times can be sort of the extreme of that. And that's why we go down that road. I think we're like, okay, and we have a little bit of, I think a lot of triathletes have a little bit of this masochistic thing in them. And, it's like, a 20-minute run, what am I going to do? What is that? But that's a lot, man. I mean, sometimes I'll go for like a 20-minute run, and you think, well, it's 20 minutes, and you look at your watch and it's like 8 minutes in, you're like, Jesus, man, I've been running for quite a while. You know what I mean? It's a lot more than you think. And sometimes that minimalism is sort of the carrot that can kind of keep things going. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's actually probably better in a lot of ways to kind of do those, sort of like you said about if you don't have a race. I mean, sometimes that's the hardest time. I mean, well, a lot of times it is, because, I mean, as I'm training for Ironman Wisconsin, it's just sort of like this thing that's out there. It's a fear. It's like this elephant in the room, and you just get up and somehow manage to get through a 2-hour run or something like that when you're not really feeling it. But just to get up and get moving around. And I've been doing a lot of walk running lately. And like I told you, I think I mentioned it before, but I think it's sort of keeping me in the game right now. And it's something that's really enjoyable for me. I've kind of recrafted this idea of walking for a minute and then running for 3, and then sometimes I'll run for 4 and whatever. And it's just sort of like it gives me grace. A lot of times.
What do you mean it gives you grace?
Well, if I'm going out for, let's say, an hour run, I start running. The thought of running for an hour really can get in my head. It really starts to bother me sometimes.
Yeah.
But if I know I have breaks in there, if I know I have a little relief in there to kind of like gather my thoughts and reground myself and take a drink of water and just sort of casually move on, every time I start running again, it feels good. So I'm not getting to these places all the time where I'm just struggling to hold on. And it's like, it's like, you know, that feeling, and you got to get to the end of the Ironman. You got to get to the end of the half Ironman, the end of the race. You can't stop. The can't stop parts can really wear you down.
Well, I think one of the parts of that really stuck with me was talking about the grace, and that's something that I've noticed myself with me lately. And I was thinking about it on Friday. I think I got up early and I went on this really long trail run, and about a little over 2 hours. And then one of the things I've been noticing that's so much different about running on trails versus running on a road, and how we and this is something I work with like daily, almost every minute with the athletes that I work with, is about removing expectations and just taking each day as it comes and not analyzing every workout against everything else, because every day is different and every person is different, every body is different every time you wake up. Like, I can't tell you how many times an athlete will comment in Train Peaks, God, I thought today's workout was going to be the worst and I just crushed it. Or, man, I really thought today was going to go great and it was terrible. Like, every single, like, more oftentimes than not, they predict their unpredictability, yet they want to be still continue to want to predict every workout. And if it doesn't go the way they predicted or they expected, then it's a failure or they're getting slower. And one of the things I've been noticing for myself is, like, with not having, like, you know, because trails, depending on the terrain, depending on the technicality of the trail, the elevation, all those kind of things are so they vary so wildly that pace is basically, it's not irrelevant, but it's pretty close. Mm-hmm. And so you can't go out and think, because your effort's going to be totally different. And what I've found is I've just found myself enjoying what I'm doing, liking that I'm pushing myself, liking that I'm also not just pushing myself, but when I'm just enjoying doing. And I know that's not like some crazy, you know, philosophical quote that you're going to want to put on a t-shirt, but sometimes, like in life, sometimes like the best thing is just to enjoy what you're doing. And there doesn't have to be some massive result that comes from it. There doesn't have to be, because again, like, and that's, I've talked about this in a couple of podcasts ago, is like, I still find it, you know, interesting that people are like, I just love your common sense approach. I'm like, hello, like, this is like, hey, this is how it's supposed to be. And usually the more like electrified and decorated and fancied up something is, usually it's just adding things to disguise something. It's like, you know, having to put a crap ton of marinate something like way off the grid to make it taste good, when really it's not the product that tastes good, it's just the marinade that you put it in. And that's a lot like training and how you prescribe workouts. It's like if there's a whole lot of bells and whistles, and usually it's trying to disguise something else. With the way that you remove expectations and just being okay with doing, there's so much value in that, because just falling in love or enjoying or finding gratification or allowing yourself to show yourself grace by doing this run walk is what you're doing is you're listening to, I think, what your body needs and what you need. Because so many times in life we force feed ourselves, and I think we had this quote a couple, it's probably been weeks or months ago. I said, we're always kind of late to our own party. And the same thing can be said in this conversation, where sometimes like our body and what or not our body, but our sometimes our soul is telling us that we need something, but we're so distracted and so zoned in on something that we feel like we have to have that we just totally neglect it. When sometimes if we just step back, because we have all these expectations and all these goals and these deadlines in which we have to meet these goals. We have these races that we signed up for, and we have to do this. And who cares what my body is going through? Who cares about my stress level? Like I got to do this, and your body is like withering away as you crush its soul because you don't take the time to energize it, to nurture it, or to listen to it. You just beat the living crap out of it every day and smash it just to fulfill your own need for whatever it is. When sometimes the best thing you can do to like revitalize your life and feel more energy and feel better about yourself and where you're going is to just get out and do something without an attachment that has to be like at the end. Like you don't like, so when I got done with this trail run, it's going to feel weird to say that I felt nothing in terms of like a goal or yeah. But I did, I don't know, it sounds, I'm sure somebody like might get what I'm saying here, but like, it wasn't like this epic thing that I did. It wasn't this, all right, I did get this thing done. I did get this metric made. I did hit this pace. It was like, man, you know what it was? I changed what I just said. It wasn't, I just felt nothing, but the thing that I felt the most when I got done was I just felt good. Like I felt, it's gonna sound weird, but I felt better about myself. Not in like a goal oriented, like I said, like I'm faster or fitter. It was just like, I just feel rejuvenated. Like I enjoyed what I just did. I loved it. I felt like I had a purpose to it, and that purpose wasn't to meet an expectation. The purpose was to go out and take care of myself. And I think maybe that's like what we're trying to get to here is like how important self-care is to people, to athletes, to really hardworking and driven, working professionals who balance all these things together. And it's tough. Like, and it'll wear on you. Sometimes it wears on me I'm trying to be a great husband. I try to be a great father. I try to be a great coach. You try to be a great athlete. Like at some point, all that drive and all that energy can just like, it can erode away the way you're supposed to be living and who you're supposed to be at this point in your life, because we're still always focused on achievement and achievement and achievement and achievement. Like what are you going to do? Like we were traveling yesterday in Allie. We like drove past this RV, and Allie was like, yeah, one of my dad's friends, they're older. They both retired. They sold everything that they knew or everything that they owned, and have just been traveling around their RV to place for like the last 5 years. And just like, that's it. And I just thought like, how incredibly awesome is that? But how courageous it is, and then how afraid of doing that I would be. totally terrified. Like that would totally like at one point it's like, man, that would be awesome. Like I could love that. I could, man, how freeing is that? And I think it's that balance between freeing and fear that we just like find ourselves smack dab in the middle of all the time. Like, man, I would totally love to like take a break from this, but I'm so terrified. What might people think? What might people say? Will I ever be able to go back? Well, where's my identity going to go? And so you kind of just like waffle in between both and just kind of just stay right smack dab in the middle, and maybe that's another a topic for a different day. But I was like, yeah, that sounds so awesome. I'm terrified of ever doing that because it's like so much unknown and freedom, but it is because we're just attached to like so many. We live our life attached to so many expectations and meeting so many deadlines and meeting so many metrics and achieving so many things and being this to so many people that we're so worried about meeting those that we forget to meet our own, or even like find enough quiet time to actually listen to what it is that we really do need. And then when we figure that out, to actually act upon it. Like I knew I needed to take a break from racing and training as hard as I was for months, but I just like I just totally ignored it because I wasn't ready to kind of accept that that's what it was. And I was like, yeah, but maybe it's just a minute. I think I can just power through. And that's like the story of most people's lives. Like
it is, man. That's like, the catch, right?
I know, right? And then finally, I just woke up and I was like, I'm done. Like I've been like relieved, and I've been in a better mood. I feel like a better coach already, and I've just like gone out and done things that I enjoy, and I just feel Like I feel like I'm proud of myself for taking better care of myself, and doing that in a way that isn't met by meeting expectations, but just by putting myself first. Which again kind of goes back to what I was really trying to talk about, was like, you don't have to have like this gigantic why to qualify for Worlds or Kona or to go sub 10 in an Ironman. It doesn't have to be your why for the year. You could just be like, you know what, I just want to feel good about who I am today. And then, you know what, I have no clue how I'm going to be wired tomorrow. Or what's going to motivate me to get out of bed tomorrow. I might just be like, dude, I don't like my dad bod, I got to go run. Or it could be I want to go push Hayden and have that time with him. Like, it could be different every day. And so I think it's important to not be glued to like one thing all the time. And I get that there's like a huge positive to that too, and being driven. And so it's not a bad thing. But again, I think there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and there's a lot of ways to stay healthy and be healthy. Mm. And there's a lot of ways to produce a random podcast like today.
Yeah, that's true. Well, when you're talking there, one of my favorite quotes popped back in my head, and it's exercise is supposed to give you energy, not take it away. And boy, are we on the cusp of that one all the time, And when you said, you're relieved and now you're out doing trail runs, and when you said you got back and you just felt better, man, what a concept, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than beating yourself down and I think that's the trap sometimes when you get in there, and I've been there, the whole idea of qualifying for Kona or doing these crazy, putting these unrealistic race goals in your head that may not be unrealistic, but the more you focus on it, the more pressure that goes around it, I think sometimes. And, of course, society is in this, a lot of us, that worked in corporate society know that there's always deadlines and pressures, and a lot of times they're just manufactured things to get you doing stuff, and it kind of creates this mentality where you're always kind of low-level stressed about things you don't even realize. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that bothers me the most about everything, I think, is that I don't even know what the hell we're doing half the time. Humanity is like, and I'm kind of like on a little ramble here, because we create all this stuff that we say is like we have to do, and there's rules and regulations, and everybody wants rules and new laws for everything, and we don't realize the more laws we have, the more or less freedom we have. You know what I mean? It's like the more pressures we put on ourselves to stay to certain levels of accomplishment or whatever it is, and I think on some level it's like you said, that gray area in the middle. If you can push through, and you don't feel like training today, but if you keep pushing through, you're gonna figure it out. And there is a lot to that. I think the David Goggins sort of mentality where you just plow in there and just be tough all the time. And man, but that just can really suck the life out of you sometimes, I think. And
well, why people, and this is going to sound harsh, and if you got kids in the room, please shut their ears or mute this for a second. But the reason that we've become so attached to labels is because most people have no fucking clue who they are. Because it is so hard to like dig deep and figure out who you really are. We would rather make our Facebook headline our political affiliation or our dietary purpose in life, or our PRs with some races, because that is who we are. No, it's not. That's just what you eat, who you voted for, and what you've done this year. That's not your identity. It's not who you are. None of it is. But we that's why we like crave those, because it gives us a sense of purpose when, and I don't want to call them easy because a lot of these are hard. But sorry, not choosing to eat meat isn't difficult. It doesn't mean that's who you are. It just means you just chose not to. Same for vice versa. And that might sound harsh, but that's why also those things are so popular, because it allows people to feel like they're a part of something when they can't figure out anything else. And I know it's not why everybody does those things, but that's the easy part. But that's also what people love to do as a society now, is we love to compare ourselves. 'Cause, 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 compare ourselves. ' My coffee is like killing me right now.
Oh, I thought you were in tears.
No, I was having like a little coffee attack. Maybe it's telling me to like slow my roll and not be so vicious.
Vicious. Like, that was vicious, man. It was sort of reminding me of back when, like I was the marketing director at the TV station years ago, like 15 years ago. I was the marketing director for Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I muted myself because I was hacking up a lung.
Oh, okay. So I was a marketing director for the TV station, and I was in a corporate role as, before marketing was every man's job, every woman's job, which it is seemingly is now. And it's the buzzword and marketing. So I used to go, towards the end of my career, I would go to these business after hour things, and it seemed like everyone I met was handing out a card that said marketing consultant. And it was just like
social media expert.
And I remember it kind of driving me crazy because it was sort of like, all you got to do is you got put out these Facebook ads or whatever the heck they are. And when we started doing C26 crushing iron stuff, in the back of my mind was this idea that I wanted to be the unmarketer. And we've kind of taken that approach, I think, in a way where we won't kind of push things down everybody's throat. And, it's sort of like we produce content and we want to give things of value, and that just sort of should be enough. But everyone seems to have like a plan. Every time I talk to someone, you guys need to be doing this. You need to be doing this. That's not what we want to do. You and I have had many, many conversations about this. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because I think it relates to, triathlon training, of course, is that, you need to be doing this. You need to be doing what you want to do and what makes you feel good and what's comfortable. I was thinking about that today before we got on the podcast. I knew that I didn't really have quote unquote a topic, but I knew some things were bubbling, and I know that whenever we sit down to do a podcast, we enjoy it, right? I mean, I think for the most part, it's something we look forward to because we haven't put all these rules and guidelines and stipulations on everything we're doing. And that's the point.
It's funny you say that because I was just thinking this the other day that that professional athletes treat what they do more fun and enjoyment and as a hobby than age groupers, and age groupers act like it's a job.
That's funny.
But it's so true because like there's like this enormous, like, I don't know, and you and I have had conversations about this before, like that aren't related to triathlon, but that one of the hardest things for people who are in recovery is when they have put their whole past behind them and they've made their amends, they've changed their life. One of the weirdest things about just living is the fact that there's nothing. And like there's no anxiety, there's no fear, there's no worry, because they're used to having, if you're in addiction or you're in that kind of phase, like you're accustomed and you're more comfortable living in chaos. And so a lot of the times when people relapse, they like will do something to like recreate chaos in life because they're actually more comfortable in chaos than they are not. And now you and I had that conversation. It was like, for me, when I kind of reached that point, I was like, it feels like 100% weird to like be in this place where I'm so at peace. I have none of that. And triathlon, again, I think is the same thing. Like we're afraid, like, and I wouldn't say that putting a race on your calendar is causing chaos, but I do think it's a level of fear that you have to have something in your life that's driving you, that's not you driving you, it's something else driving you, that we have to insert in our lives, like whether we like it or not. Because I think a lot of people sign up for races and hit the register button knowing full well when they do, there's less than a 20% chance they're actually really going to do this. But in the moment, it's like a fleeting hope of like pulling that registration ripcord that's like, this is going to save me, this is going to save me, this is going to save me, this is going to answer my problems, this is going to fix my relationship, this is going to fix my heat in my job, this is going to fix me. And don't get me wrong, there have been plenty of times where people have signed up for racing and it's totally transformed them. But it wasn't signing up for the race that changed them. It was the work they did in the middle and leading up to it. And here's the big secrets out. You can actually do the work and be a part of a process without having one of those at the end. You can just work hard to figure it out. And you said, like, you and I have gone back and forth on this like a ton. And I think we still do. It's like, all right, where do you want to be in like 3 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you mean, like, I'm like, I don't know. I really have no idea. And I was like, I know we want to put things on a paper and you're supposed to, and people ask it all the time. Like, I have a 1 year plan, an 18-month plan. I'm like, that's great. I'm not really wired like that. But I was listening to another podcast, and the guy was like telling people why it's a terrible idea to make those out, because then now you're just basically tunnel visioned your way into what you think has to happen in the next 5 years, when other things could be coming at you from different directions that are going to be a better possibilities and better for you, and you're going to totally like ignore them because you've already got your 5 year plan. And I think triathletes do that in terms of, like, again, laser focusing on something that they just came up with versus listening to who they are and who their life is. And that was kind of the gist behind the not really a challenge, but what I put on our closed Facebook group last week, in kind of like the time of the year. And it was kind of like a challenge for athletes in terms of trying to figure out where they are and what they wanted to do and planning next year and how they should go about it. And the what I was trying to say is just because, like, listen, there are very, very few races like sell out right now. Like very, very, very few like sell out instantaneously. So you can actually take a little bit more time than you normally would. And so I said it's that time of year when we're all looking for new goals in 2020. Many athletes prefer to set goals and then work towards them as if the register button is magic, and it will immediately change their track record and ability to stay healthy and consistent, oftentimes claiming that they have to have a race on the calendar to be consistent. With the majority of races taking much longer to sell out these days, I challenge you to think of things differently. Write down today what you want and think your goals and or races should be for next year. And then commit to being consistent in your training for 60 days, as consistent as possible. Then after that 60-day sample size of your life, be objective and pinpoint goals and or races that actually meet that same standard and see if they still line up. Set your goals and races based upon what you know you can do and not what you hope you can do, and set yourself up for success and not failure this year. And listening to yourself and setting yourself up for success are synonymous. But we don't like to do that sometimes because we're not comfortable with where we are, because we are, as society has basically trained every fiber of our being now, is that we just need more. We got to have more. What I'm doing right now isn't enough. I got to be able to do more. I got to have more. A lot of people I've heard say, like, that is actually why the real estate and housing has like boomed. It's because people are so unhappy. Because people are always wanting something different and wanting something more. They're not really happy with where they are and what they're doing. So buying a house and doing this and buying is actually more of a sign that people are unhappy than it is of some, like, huge, gigantic, economical growth, fueled by, policy or reform, whatever you want to say. And I just think that's also so true with athletes, is that it's hard to, like, it's like I want more all the time. And I think while it's okay to want more and you always want to be better, if you're always wanting to be better and you're never appreciating where you are now and taking that kind of time, well, you're not learning, you're not growing, and you're definitely not taking enough the same care of yourself. Like, if you're a parent, your kid comes home from school and it's like, hey, you got an A. Like, yeah, well, next time we got to get an A again, and we got to get a better A. We got to get an A plus.
Better A.
You don't say that to your kids. It's like, I think if parents would like parent themselves and in terms of training like they try to parent their kids as they do academics and sports, then they would have a totally different. Like with Hayden, like when he does something, he like claps. He's like, I did it. I really try and do a good job saying, you worked really hard. I'm very proud of you. Instead of saying like, you won or great job, because, something that's determined by completing it and getting that one result that only means you did good, instead of like really challenging him and supporting him to just keep working, because effort is what matters the most, and you should be rewarded and feel good about the effort, not always what that effort got you, because that's life. You can put in like the best day ever and and struggle, or you could give like a half-ass effort and end up being okay. It's like, how are you going to lay your head down the pillow at night, and what's going to make you feel better?
You're right, man. It's I don't know. I think there's a natural. You were talking about the housing market, and I think there's a natural. I don't know if it's like a covert mission or like sinister plan or whatever, but like I think there's something to be said for creating chaos in the world and uncertainty and fear and things like that to drive markets. I think that makes a lot of sense to me, and I've often thought that it's sort of like, why do we just keep, you talk about like the people that are, sort of like raised up in our minds, or the Steve Jobses of the world, the Jeff Bezos, the guys that, allegedly just keep driving and pushing, and like they never stop and they keep going all the time. These are the people that we kind of aspire to on a lot of levels, and I've always wondered why. It's sort of like, I guess that creates innovation and whatnot, but like for most of us, we kind of like wallow in this world of like, yeah, I want to be Steve Jobs, but I'm probably not going to be Steve Jobs. So who does that make me? Is that a failure? I don't know. And does it make me want to buy new stuff to feel better or whatever? And I was actually listening to, and this is another plug on Rich Roll. He ought to, maybe shoot us a few bucks on the promotion here. But he had a guy on there about talking about addiction, and he basically said everybody's an addict on some level.
Oh, 100%.
So whether it's heroin or cocaine or alcohol or phones or whatever it is, we all have sort of this addictive nature, and it's that and that's why I love talking about that, because what everything that you went through in recovery and those kind of lessons are so valuable, I think, on many levels. And I think it is all about sort of like giving yourself grace and understanding that willpower, only has so much force behind it. Mm-hmm. And eventually you're going to crumble. And I think that kind of comes back to the run, walk, or you going out in the trails and feeling good about whatever it was, based on, just the fact that you were doing something.
Yep.
And how do we get to that point?
Doing something is just as good. I mean, it's like, it doesn't devalue you at all to just go out and do something and not be like some earth-shattering, like, you ain't gonna win a gold medal. Guess what? And guess what? Nobody cares anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hey, kind of like this podcast. Sometimes we just do it. And if this is your first time listening, make sure you dive back into the rest. We do talk triathlon, but and this is a way that I like to coach too. Like, I don't like to force feed answers. Like, and this is the way a lot of our podcasts end up going, is, we like to drive discussion, and we like to drive a thought process, and we like to challenge you to think about things, and because your thoughts and your goals and your mindset should be your own. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be because of somebody else. And so if we can help spur a thought, or get you to move, or to rethink things, or to see a different approach, or if, frankly, if it just spoke to 5 people out of the 50 that probably listened today, then we'll have done what we set out to do. And let's just set out to do it and see what happens. And these podcasts are great. These are some of my favorite to do, because they're just conversations, and that's, again, like, also why a lot of people enjoy listening to our podcasts, is because they're not scripted. They are, they're just, you and I talking about the things that go on with life and what we do, and hey, hopefully it resonated with someone. And we'll come back Thursday with the 5 tips to a faster flip turn.
I cannot wait for that. I've done 2 flip turns in my life.
2?
2 to 5.
I wish I had videos of that.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, man. And I just can't. My equilibrium doesn't do well with them. I'm sure if I keep pushing through, I'll be able to get them down.
Well, they're overrated anyway for age group athletes. Like, don't spend your time learning how to do a flip turn. Just spend your time trying to figure out how to swim faster. Hey, we appreciate you listening. Dig back in the archives, subscribe, review. Let us know what you think. If you want to hop in the conversation, you can always join Facebook and our group, Crushing Iron Group on Facebook, and hop in. Great conversation. A lot of awesome people in there. They're supportive and wise, non-intimidating, and are always open and willing to answer your questions, regardless of what they are. If you haven't checked it out, you can always check out our website, crushingiron.com. It's got info on training, coaching, swim analysis, our camps, gear, you name it, it's on there. It's our one-stop shop. Check it out. If you want to reach out to Mike directly, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need to reach out to me directly, you can hit me up at C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man.
Talk soon, dude.
Appreciate your time. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, man. See you.